Now it's time for Viking Mail Call, a weekly show where you, the fans, get to ask the questions on your mind and have them answered by former Minnesota Vikings linebacker and coach, Pete Bercich. And now your host, Tom Moore.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Vikings Mail Call. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com. I'm joined by former NFL linebacker and now game day color radio analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Bercich. Well, Pete, I got to tell you, you're coming to us in a different place every time. We've had you fishing before. Now you're at a football game. I think your son Pete, which we all know is Repeat, he's playing a little football tonight. What's going on?
Yeah, he is. It's in the city of Lakeville. This is a big deal because it's Lakeville North versus Lakeville South.
Yep.
So it's kind of a in-home rivalry, and weather's holding out so far. But a lot of folks here tonight to see the game. So North is winning right now, 14-7, which is good. So all is good at the moment.
Well, it's interesting. Repeat, he's a sophomore and he's already dressing up there. It's a pretty big deal. What numbers is he wearing and what positions he playing?
He has probably the worst number in football, 86.
Ooh.
I don't know how he got stuck with that, but. He plays defensive end, outside linebacker, and then tight end and offense. So he's mixing it up. It's just good to see. He said it's a big program here. There's a lot of kids, and much bigger than high school that I went to growing up. That's for sure. And so I'm proud of him. He works his rear end off, and it's crazy because I've been watching him play for a long time, and he'll have 2 years of varsity, and then it's all over. So it goes by quickly.
Boy, it does. I'll tell you, I talk about going by quickly. Pete, the Vikings laid an incredibly large egg at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara on Monday night, and as NFL fan Deet Shepard turned 64 today, he's starting to wonder if the Vikings will ever win a championship. I mean, I have no other way to ask this than, what the hell went wrong, and how could the team look so flat in the season opener with a national audience on hand?
Well, it's a lot of different things, and you do have to give credit to San Francisco because they game planned Minnesota, the Vikings, very well, and they came out and executed very well. So, you watched that first drive, and they came out in the multiple tight end sets, which really I don't think anybody was expecting, and they knew how the front was set, and they got Chad Greenway to line up on the line of scrimmage instead of Anthony Barr, and they executed. It worked. It worked well for him. Offensively, we had some opportunities early. When you have a blocked field goal and a muffed punt that you recover, and you can't do anything with it on the scoreboard, that's draining. You're +2 in the take give, or even more than that because I know Teddy had an interception. So it's a little scratch. It's a little mind numbing and. I don't think all is lost. I don't think that we can sit here and say that the season's over. This team is no good. Teddy had a rough night. He had a couple receivers open even on that first drive and just didn't get it done. So he'll settle down. Adrian Peterson will come around. It'll get better. Don't worry.
Well, it's funny, Pete, you've been in lots of locker rooms in the NFL as a player and as a coach. So can you give the fans an idea? What was Mike Zimmers' likely tone and message to the team when they return to work this week?
Oh, this is Wednesday would not be the kind of it wouldn't be a Wednesday that how would I say it? It's the Wednesday that I'm glad I'm not coaching anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trust me, it's everybody's short-tempered. It's such a long season. You try to be as steady as possible. You don't want to get too high. Don't want to get too low. You want to be as steady as you can possibly be. But with how things went, there has to be there had to have been a few butt chewings and some. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple guys get moved or don't start and to wake some people up. It's Zim. I think Zim was a little shocked after the game even about how poorly things went.
Yeah,
when the head coach is a little taken aback, then that's a problem.
No kidding. I got to imagine if we go in there and we try to record this thing, we're going to have to use some network sensors, aren't we?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's one of it. You look at Detroit coming to town, and then you got Kansas City and Denver, who both played last night in a pretty solid game. Kansas City doesn't have much in the way of a quarterback, but Jamal Charles is pretty solid.
Yeah.
So you got two tough games coming up.
Yeah, and as we found out a long time ago, there's really no easy game in the NFL. And one of the things you just mentioned ago is Adrian Peterson will get it going, and he was barely used in the first half. And when he did carry the ball, by his own admission, he looked tentative. And Pete, we've talked about it before a couple of times. Why would the Viking coaches not give him at least a few reps in the preseason to shake off that rust and get him acclimated with the offense?
Well, that's the $1 million question. I mean, I think they put such a value on having guys healthy for the beginning of the season, that they're willing to look a little rusty in the beginning of the year or risk looking rusty in the beginning of the year. I mean, for these guys, for most of the starters, the Dallas preseason game was the last game that they played. They only played into the second quarter, maybe the first half. So they went over 2 weeks without playing. I mean, and this isn't the bye. When you have the bye, you've got 2 weeks off, obviously, but you're 3, 4 or more games, 5 games into the season, so it's a little different. You're getting a rest. You're with preseason, you have 7, 8 games under your belt, whatever. But it just, I wonder. The pendulum is kind of swung the other way. You know what I mean? It's like they do everything to not get anybody injured, and it ends up, I think, resulting in a lot of injuries. I mean, when you play 15, 20 plays in a preseason game a couple times and then expect to go out and play for 65 snaps, you're going to see it. You're going to see it. And I think we saw it with the Viking defense. They were tired.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. A lot of the blame for the game went on the offensive performance, really went on the offensive line. But, to me at least, and maybe you saw it differently, it seemed like at times they provided decent protection for Teddy Bridgewater. What did you see with the Viking offensive line, and how much of a loss is John Sullivan being out the first 8 weeks of the season?
Sully, having Sully out it's a pretty good loss. It's a pretty big loss. I mean, Frazier's doing a good job, but just having him in there and his knowledge and his ability to, he's probably seen everything once before. I think there are a lot of breakdowns in protection. Whenever you see free runners to the quarterback, like we saw guys like safeties and linebackers when they blitz and they're untouched to the quarterback, I mean, that's a protection error. That's that kind of an error. It's not a guy missing a block. I mean, and we saw quite a bit of that. So fortunately, a lot of it is mental, But you go against Detroit now, who has a very, very good defensive line. They lost Ndamukong Suh, but they signed Haloti Ngata, and you got Jones on the outside, and you've got some talent. I mean, it's not going to get any easier. This front seven against Detroit is really solid as well.
Yeah. Well, on a positive, at least we found out that offensive lineman T.J. Clemens, he has quite the swim move himself in sacking Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, absolutely right. That was a young guy has to learn when you block for a quarterback that is mobile and can scramble, that you have to block until the whistle. Just like those guys did years ago against Barry Sanders. I mean, they didn't stop blocking people till the whistle blew because they may be on the complete opposite side of the field, but Barry would end up getting over there. So, they're learning, and for TJ, he's young. And it's lessons learned, and sometimes you just gotta learn them the hard way. You hope that he learns them, you hope that they get better, but there is a lot of room for improvement.
It's funny, going off track a little bit. You mentioned Barry Sanders, and you and I have talked about it before. You've had the experience to start against Detroit, play against Barry Sanders. What was that like for you trying to defend him?
Yeah, my first start in the NFL was against Detroit in the Silverdome. In Pontiac, Michigan, and Barry was a running back. I remember what sticks out in my mind is just how when Tony Dungy, who was the coordinator at the time, just treated it and said the first guy to him, you're probably not going to tackle him. So what you want to do is try to saw off that outside leg and get him to cut back inside. Because you watch the highlight tape, and believe me, every game was almost a highlight tape. His big plays were made bouncing outside, so you try to turn him back into the pursuit.
Yeah.
And 11 guys you're not going to do it alone. I did tackle him though during the game. Obviously, he was coming in between the line and in an area about the size of a phone booth, so he couldn't. So I actually got to tackle him, and for about 3 seconds, I stood up and I'm like, I just tackled Barry Sanders.
Hey man, but I'll tell you what, it was Andy Warhol. Cool. It was an Andy Warhol moment. I've actually seen the still shot of you tackling him. You don't have to tell anybody anything that most of my plays look like. That's all you got to say.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Hey,
that's all you want to do. It's all you want to do is piss a guy off like that. That's really, that's all you want to do.
Absolutely. well, I got to tell you, though, we talk about defense, and I remember last year, our conversation in the Green Bay game, we were up there, and the defense was just all out of alignment. They were freelancing, and then they got gouged by those cutback lanes, which really looked like what was happening with the 49ers. Pete, what did you see when you were out there that caused the inability of the Viking defense to stop that run on Monday?
Well, I think it's quite a bit different than Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay, you don't put the extra defender in the box at all, ever, because once you do, Aaron Rodgers will see it and pick you apart through the air. So you have to try to, stop the run with one less guy in the box, and we didn't do very well at it. I mean, what happened against San Francisco is they just came out with multiple tight ends and gave us some fronts and some looks that the guys weren't ready for. Because, again, they weren't lining up very quickly, and they were looking at each other and just weren't prepared to snap, and they were stringing those plays out to the sidelines, making the corners rally up and tackle, and that went on in the beginning of the game. But by the end of the game, those guys were, they were wiped out. Sharif Floyd took himself out of the first series, I believe, because he was gassed. He was tired. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like I said, if you don't play in the preseason, you can't get into shape. I mean, you can practice and run in practice, but nothing can simulate a game situation.
No, it's 100% burst of adrenaline on every single play.
Exactly right. And, the 2 minutes and no huddles and, things like that, you just can't. And so the preseason snaps are necessary. And again, you don't want to get guys hurt. That's all fine and dandy. But, I wonder if, like I said, the pendulum swung the other way, and there is a cost to keeping everybody healthy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. When we look to the defense, we've had this highly touted defensive line, both at the ends and the tackles. We didn't seem to get any push whatsoever. What was the cause of that, and why didn't we see any more adjustments?
Well, some of it's fundamental, I think. I mean, again, I'm not coaching in the system, and I'm not sure exactly what they're taught, but when you play teams like Denver used to do and Indy used to do, and they run that zone play where when you're a defender, basically at the snap, the offensive line is either hauling ass to the left or hauling ass to the right. We used to call it elephant blocking because it looked like the old circus elephants, nose to tail.
Yeah.
And for the defensive lineman, you have to get some type of penetration, and then you have to keep your shoulders square. I mean, when Everson Griffin got beat for the touchdown on the cutback, I mean his shoulders were completely perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, and you can't have that. So I think as the game wore on and guys got wore out, fundamentals started to break down, and there's a lot schematically you can do to help that, but I don't think that they were planning on that style of running attack. And the San Francisco running back's a big fella now. He's 230 some pounds. He's a big boy, so he doesn't go down all that easy.
Well, I'll tell you what, it wasn't the finest of hours for the linebackers either. And, they looked decent in preseason, but they looked like they were lost and maybe a step behind the 49ers. But specifically, what were your impressions of Gerald Hodges playing in the middle?
I think he struggled a little bit. He over-pursued a little bit. And, when you get those hard outside runs and then they come back at you with the play action, it takes a veteran guy, a pretty cagey veteran guy, to be able to distinguish the two. And he was a little late on some of them. But then again, when you're trying to run sideline to sideline and you got a guard that just shoots right up into your lap, one of those big fellas up front really needs to replace you. And again, it's like nothing is as good as it seems, nothing's as bad as it seems, and somewhere in between reality lies. And I think for Gerald, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, he did some nice things, but he needs to become a veteran very quickly.
Okay. And I'm assuming, based upon your comments, you're giving Viking fans hope. You expect them to bounce back pretty significantly this week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, though, Detroit's is a bit of a concern. I mean, again, you're going to have to throw the football, I think, just because their front seven is pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. Stafford did not throw a touchdown pass to a wide receiver. Calvin Johnson had 2 receptions for 39 yards. I don't know how many weeks that's going to go on. You know what I mean? They're overdue in a lot of respects, I think. But defensively, from what little film I saw on them, they're pretty impressive up front.
Yeah.
And San Diego got him through the air. That's how San Diego beat him.
Okay. Well, let me swing you around past Detroit and Minnesota, and I'm going to go elsewhere in the league for a couple of questions for you. A lot of the Bronco fans, even though they won last night in late fashion against the Chiefs, they're saying that Peyton Manning's not the same quarterback, and he may be done. Yet he's got the Broncos at 2-0. Are the fans in Denver panicking too quickly on Peyton Manning?
Overreacting maybe. I mean, is he the guy he was? 5 years ago, no. Is he, he finished the season off last year, on a slump, no question. And so they are looking hard at it in the beginning of this year. And, you watch him throw. I know he never threw or didn't always throw a ton of spirals, but, he struggled with accuracy. He struggled with a lot of stuff, and he didn't look great. Fortunately, the quarterback for Kansas City, his opponent, didn't look all that great either. So, I don't think either quarterback really was outstanding. But I'll say this though: Peyton did get better as the game went on. Yep. He had his best quarter right at the end, and that says a lot.
Yeah, I'm curious from your perspective because you coach in the league. When you look at a boxer, they always say the last thing to go is the punch. Okay, when you look at a quarterback, what's the first sign that they're headed downhill? Is it a loss of accuracy? Is it a velocity on the ball? What is it?
It's hard to say. You do lose arm strength as you go, but you lose it after the quarterback. If you're lucky enough to stay healthy, you start losing it. Maybe after 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. The physical skills do start to erode, but you more than make up for them by learning and being smart. But for Peyton with the neck injury that he had, and the numbness in his fingers, maybe you watch it closely, but you wonder if his inability or his lack of accuracy at times is due to that, or is it due to something else, or he's not getting any younger, and obviously he doesn't move in the pocket at all. So if you get any pressure on him, he just goes down. Mm-hmm. He's not mobile like he used to be. I remember in Indy, they'd run that real wide outside play action run, and then he'd step back and heave it deep, and I don't even think he can get out of the pocket that far anymore.
Yeah. Well, he never was our Wildcat quarterback anyway, so he wasn't counting on his wheels too much. But it's interesting how you get these quarterbacks who are not running quarterbacks do such a great job of sliding in the pocket. Even a Tom Brady, not the most mobile quarterback, slides really well in that pocket.
No. Well, look at Dan Marino. I mean, Dan Marino was one of the hardest guys to sack because he was just so quick, and he had the ability to just step up. And, when the time was right, he would just step up real quickly and get rid of the football. So. Manning's under the center a lot more in this Kubiak offense, and so there's some changes and adjustments and things that are going on, and but when you have a great defense like they do, and a hustling defense, a pass rushing defense, that defense keeps playing like it is. It's they're going to win. They're going to win quite a few games.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, as we swing over to Oakland, your old linebacking teammate Jack Del Rio took over as head coach there. And obviously he's a solid coach with a great NFL pedigree. Yet no matter how much talent the Raiders assemble, why do they always look like they're playing for the league's first-round choice in the NFL draft every game?
I think that they're thin on talent on their offensive line. I haven't seen any film on them. I felt that with Al Davis still in the building, that team would really never win, only because I think Al Davis made it abundantly clear to the players that they were more important than the coaches, and that's a bit of subterfuge. The players, when you have the owner asking you how your coaches are screwing you up, you have a tendency to say, "Oh, if the owner loves me, then why am I worried about the coaches?" Right. But with him being gone, and you wonder, and I know, having spent the little time in San Francisco, that loss they sold out. The Raiders, they sold out. They had a sellout, and the people were high. They were ready to go. They were excited, and then they got the carpet yanked out from underneath them. So we know the feeling, I think, after the opening game we experienced, but I think for the Raiders, it was probably times 2 or 3.
Yeah, and it's probably never a good sign when former Viking quarterback Christian Ponder is being contacted by him to come and play backup again.
Yeah, that is not good. But we'll see with Carr. I think he hurt his thumb or hit one of his fingers, and I think he's going to be okay. So Yeah. But for Ponder, it's an interesting ride for him. You know, you go from starter to out very quickly, and it's a tough adjustment. But we'll see.
No doubt. Well, we talk about former Vikings in Tampa, the Bucks. You know, they got about as leaky as a defense the NFL has seen since the Saints were known as the Aints back in the 70s. And how much longer until Lovie Smith removes the Tampa 2 defense and perhaps former Vikings head coach Leslie Frazier?
The Tampa 2 defense, it's had its time, and again, I haven't seen enough film to know that that's actually still the defense that he's necessarily running. Mm-hmm. But every single year, quarterbacks get better, receivers get better, the field conditions get better, and there's so many holes in that coverage, and people know where they are, and they have routes designed to beat them, and you need to have elite talent. They always say the better your players, the thinner your playbook. And if you don't have that kind of talent to play that Tampa 2, if you don't have a 4-man pass rush that can get a quarterback down on the ground in 3 seconds, then there's going to be a lot of holes downfield. So he's struggling. He's got to get some more talent down there or find ways to adjust.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about Oakland and Tampa in our last 2 questions. It's hard to believe it was about 10 years ago they were in the Super Bowl together.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. It is crazy. It's just,
and even more ironic was...
At least they made it, right?
Yeah, and even more ironic was 2 former Viking quarterbacks, Brad Johnson and Rich Gannon, starting that game.
You're right. And they both admitted that they scuffed up the footballs before the game, and, no one said a word about it. It's not like the Flakegate, right?
Absolutely. Well, listen, Pete, I got one to close out today that I think is going to be near and dear to your heart. And today there was a study released by the Department of Veteran Affairs and Boston University that showed that 96% of former NFL players in the study, and there were 91 players in the study, they tested positive for signs of dementia and depression. And that's obviously led to some significant problems for some of the older players here. Now, last week on the show, you mentioned to Rob Schneider that you yourself are suffering from some of these symptoms. And, Pete, what I wanted to know is, are you surprised by the results of the study, and exactly what type of post-football head trauma are you struggling with?
Well, am I surprised? Yes, I am. I didn't think it would be, that high. And you got to be careful with studies about what are they defining as the signs of, depression and dementia and those kinds of things. And, I think for guys, and we've seen it with Junior Seau and some other, that it's a hard enough transition going from the NFL, where you played, let's say, like in Junior's case, 20 years, and then you come out and, you got to report to a boss, and you got to, and people listen to that and they go, well, what's the big deal? I do it every day, right? We all do it every day.
Yep.
But it's not easy for a lot of these guys, and they struggle mightily with it. That transition from that lifestyle and from, there's nothing greater, Tom, than stepping on a field and playing in a Monday night game or a playoff game. I mean, there's nothing close. Nothing close.
Right. Nothing's
going to come and fill that void with you. And football's the one sport that when you're done, you walk away, you're done. You don't get to play pickup, basketball or softball or anything like that. I mean, it's over. And it's a tough transition for a lot of guys, and a lot of guys don't prepare themselves necessarily to make that transition when they're done, because while you're playing, that's all you concentrate on. I mean, you're 100% focused on continuing your career in the NFL.
Yeah. And it's funny because, I mean, when you look at this, you realize you talk about that peak and you never have it again. Most players are out of the NFL by the time they're 26, 27 years of age. That's got to be hard to deal with when you realize I might have hit the peak of my accomplishment in my life, and I got 50 years to go, 60 years to go.
No, you're absolutely right. And, it's guys make a good amount of money in a short period of time. And the question is, while you're playing and while you're out there, if those guys were living on a $50,000 a year budget, then yeah, they may have, 4 or 5 years in the bank. But if they don't get on it and get something going, then that money goes away. By no means does everyone who plays in the NFL are they set for the rest of their lives, so to speak.
Yeah.
And especially these guys that only play 2 or 3 years, like the average guy. And It's a struggle for a lot of them, but I think everybody that has been through it would do it again in a heartbeat. I mean, it's that great. It is that good. It is that great. It is that amazing to be out there and be part of that. That it's worth it.
Well, it's funny because we talked to a good friend of yours and a former teammate last year on the show, Leroy Horde, and he struggles, mightily with the head trauma and the concussions and the headaches he had. And again, we kind of talk about what you see. I mean, I don't want to pad your ego here, Pete, but I mean, you seem articulate, you seem capable. What type of effects do you see from any concussions that you had?
You don't know. It's such a hard thing to because I don't know how I was or used to be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just am what I am, and so who knows? I know on certain days are harder than others. Certain days, the recall of normal names and things just seem to get in the way. I mean, those are signs. The headaches and things like that. I mean, those are all. Those are all there. I really don't know. That's kind of the. I would always say, like the bright side of Alzheimer's or something like that is you get to meet somebody new every day, right?
That's right,
so,
sure.
Yeah, I get to, so I'm out meeting new people every day.
Yeah. Well, and don't kid yourself.
and I don't mean to make light of everything here, Tom, but it's hard, it's hard to define.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, if I get a glimpse of you having any of these episodes, I'm going to go right after you and tell me you owe me $100. I mean, I'm going to do it. I have no choice.
Well, Jim, I would never forget your name. You know that.
Well, Pete, I appreciate you kind of sharing that insight. And that brings us to the close of this week's editions of Viking Mail Call. Now, we'll be back next week with our guest will be Hall of Fame fullback Larry Zonka from the the only undefeated team in NFL history, the 1972 Miami Dolphins. In the meantime, don't forget to check out all of our 50 past interviews on PeteBFootball.com and follow Pete on Twitter at Pete Bercich. And Pete, again, we wish you the best of luck. You keep us up to date on what Repeat's doing out there on the football field.
Oh, absolutely will. Thank you, Tom.
You bet. So until next week, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.